And I think because we have exhausted, we have a lot of members of parliament. Nobody, not a single member of parliament has had any reservations about Dr. Amoth because his own record speaks for itself. And we are very happy, and I'm also happy that we will have the health sector in the hands of an able Kenyan. So, Madam Speaker, with those few remarks, I support Dr. Amoth's nomination on this, and I call on the members now to also support him once he takes up the position, because there's need for political will, goodwill, for him to perform optimally in that position. And on my part, I can promise him we'll give him all the support he needs. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Meli, member for Tinderet constituency.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support. Madam Speaker, I rise to support the report by the Committee on Health. Madam Speaker, Patrick Amoth has actually shown that he served with integrity, with dignity, and commitment to work. In fact, during the COVID-19 period, he actually showed that he was able to give a lot of technical advice, more so on medical issues, and therefore he averted a crisis, especially in this country, and more so his knowledge on health actually assisted during that particular time. Madam Speaker, the Chair Health Committee actually has given us a very detailed report about the education background, the work Dr. Amoth has done in government. And one of the things that is coming out very clearly is that Dr. Amoth is a very committed civil servant. He's a man who actually loves his work. He is one person who has done his work very well. And this is something that other civil servants and other people are that wherever one is appointed, he should serve with integrity, with dignity, and passion to assist the people of this country. The offices that we hold, Madam Speaker, are not meant for us. They are meant to serve the people. They are meant to ensure that we deliver on services. We make sure that if the drugs are needed, if there is an intervention in a particular area, the officers appointed serve the people of this country with all dedication, with all the passion, with commitment, and have integrity and fairness, so that we are going to have a nation where services are being provided without any problem. Madam Speaker, I support, and I want to say that we pass this unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Dr. Nyikal, member for Seme.
Now listen to people.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Madam Speaker, I rise to support the committee report on the appointment of Dr. Amoth. Madam Speaker, Dr. Amoth, when he came before the committee, had passed through the correct processes. We looked at all the processes. They were correctly carried out. And when he was before the Joint Committee of the Senate and the National Assembly on Health, he actually met all the requirements, the integrity requirements from EAC, the issues of Article 6 of the Constitution, public service issues. They met all those. And Madam Speaker, what is most important is the technical competence of Dr. Amoth. People have said here that Dr. Amoth acted his competence, but what validates his competence more than anything else that actually has been an embarrassment to the people of Kenya is that Dr. Amoth was actually appointed the chair of the executive board of World Health Organization. And that is a body where you are actually voted for by directors of health, ministers of health from 50 countries in the world. And Madam Speaker, I interacted with Amoth on 2 occasions when we were at the World Health Assembly. And Madam Speaker, the whole world was always looking up to Dr. Amoth. He was chairing many committees. He was being asked to give comments on everything. He was recognized worldwide as a competent health administrator. Mr. Speaker, personally, during the interview, I was satisfied the way he answered the questions, his understanding of the ministry structure. Madam Speaker, I think is perfect. We couldn't get a better person for this job. Definitely, I didn't need any assistance to assess him on his technical competence, and he did actually do a good job. Madam Speaker, there were some issues that came with the memoranda that actually were questioning his issues. And one of them was the issue of clinical officers. And when we listened, it was a policy issue that needed not be raised. The other one, Madam Speaker, was the issue of termination of pregnancies. Once again, when this was brought, and the person who brought the memorandum, when we actually questioned him, is somebody who actually is complaining of all issues of vaccination, all issues of reproductive health. And Madam Speaker, even the issues of vaccines that was brought, actually he answered competent. And how he managed COVID, I think we don't have to say anymore. And Madam Speaker, I support this. And Madam Speaker, I'll tell Dr. Moth, I think this one he understands, that the biggest challenge in the health sector is actually harmonization of the national policies at the headquarters and the delivery at the county. In terms of human resource, supplies in drugs and non-pharmaceutical, financing, particularly chief, and the issue of UHC. But I'm sure he is up to the job. He will be able to do this and deliver and actually achieve for us UHC if given the opportunity. With that, Madam Speaker, I support his appointment.
The Honorable Professor Guyo Jaldesa.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the chance. I want to say that I support the committee report, and which is also my committee. And to put the record straight, I want to say that I examined and passed Dr. Moth as a postgraduate student at the University of Nairobi. Fortunately, I also vetted him at the committee level. And for that, I want to assure the House that Dr. Moth is a highly qualified, competent individual ready to serve the country in that capacity. So, without wasting time, but the other thing which I need to state is that Dr. Moth raised the flag of Kenya by serving as the co-chair of the WHO Executive Committee. So those years of he acted actually made him be fully baked and competent to serve in that capacity. And with that, I support the motion.
Thank you very much. I see many points of order. I see so many points of order. Honorable Jared Okello, what is out of order?
I thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, there seems to be a general consensus that everybody in this House is pro-Dr. Amoth without any contestation, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, on that breath, I would ask you to indulge us that the mover be called upon to reply. And I thank you.
I see a lot of support in both sides, on both sides of the aisle, but I'll put this to a vote that the mover be called upon to reply. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? Nay. The ayes have it.
Honorable Speaker, I want to thank the members for overwhelmingly supporting the committee's position. And I want to thank the Committee of Health of the National Assembly. And Honorable Speaker, I beg to reply that Dr. Patrick Amondo Amoth be approved as the Director General for Health. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, So then, honorable members, I'll go ahead. I am going now to put the question that taking into consideration the findings of the Joint Committee of the National Assembly, Departmental Committee on Health, and the Senate Standing Committee on Health in its report on the vetting of a nominee for appointment as Director General for Health, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 31st July 2024, and pursuant to Section 16(2) of the Health Act 2017 and Section 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011. This House approves the appointment of Dr. Patrick Omwanda Amoth as the Director General of Health. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as have a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 11, motion. Report on the consideration of the audited accounts of specified state corporations.
Chair, Chairperson, Public Investments Committee on Social Services, Administration and Agriculture. Is a chairperson in the House? Yes, thank you very much. The Honorable Wangwe, please proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the second report of the Public Investments Committee on Social Services, Administration and Agriculture on its consideration of the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the Kenya Medical Training College for financial years 2017-2018 to 2020-2021. The Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital for financial years 2019-2020, the Kenya Medical Research Institute for financial years 2012-2013 and 2013-2014, the Kenya Medical Laboratory Technicians and Technologies Board for financial years 2014-2015 to 2020-2021, and the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council for financial years 2017-2018 to 2020-2021, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 22nd February 2024. Honorable Speaker, during the deliberation of this by the committee, there are various issues that were discussed, and the report, Honorable Speaker, is shared in two versions. Version number 1, there are general committee observations, and version number 2, there are specific observations on specific entities that I've listed above. Honorable Speaker, allow me to begin by sharing with the House the general committee observations and recommendations. 1, there are issues that came out on the observations of the committee, being 1, lack of ownership documents on land and building. Honorable Speaker, the committee observed and noted with concern that several state corporations, which have been highlighted, the 5 of them in number, did not possess title documents for land and buildings in their occupation. Honorable Speaker, a case in point, Honorable Speaker, is the KMTC, which did not possess title for listed 19 parcels of land, which total acreage of 248.68 at the headquarters and constituent colleges, all valued at 350,735,000. Honorable Speaker, a case of Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital does not possess title and ownership documents for their 100 acres of land that it sits on. Honorable Speaker, you can imagine an institution like KUTRH sitting on a land without a title, what it means and the massiveness of the infrastructure that is built. Honorable Speaker, Kenya Medical Research Institute does not possess title deed for various parcels of land, valued at 227,642,500, being where the headquarters today of Kemri, with a size of 8.083 hectares, There is also land by Kemri next to Kenyatta National Hospital, 1.34 hectares. There is also land by Kemri in Kilifi, 2.705 hectares. There is land by Kemri in Kwale, 2.023 hectares. Mbagathi Road, there is land by Kemri, 2.4282 hectares. And in Taita Taveta, Honorable Speaker, land owned by Kemri, 4.047 hectares. All those parcels of land, they are owned by Kemri on paper, but they have no title documents. Honorable Speaker, it should be noted that under the IPSA, International Public Sector Accounting Standards, you can only put figures to paper if at all you have the ownership documents so that you can say these are your assets. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, you can imagine all the 5 institutions where they have placed us. What does it translate into, Honorable Speaker? They cannot value the land, and the committee further observed that Kenyatta University Teaching and Referral Hospital does not possess ownership document for these 100 acres that it sits on, and it cannot value that land because they have no title for that. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, whatever they state in the books today cannot be authenticated. And all those institutions, the 5 of them in total, cannot be authenticated because they have understated the values because they cannot value the land. Honorable Speaker, what does the committee recommend in terms of the general observations of the above? We recommended that within 3 months upon adoption of this report, the accounting officers of the affected state corporations should liaise with the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development, and the National Land Commission to fast-track the process of securing ownership documents for the corporation land. The accounting officers of the affected state corporations should report to the National Assembly within period on the status. We also recommended, Honorable Speaker, that the accounting officer of various state corporations should ensure that the entity's assets are valued periodically. Once they get the title deeds, Honorable Speaker, they should proceed and value the assets periodically and actual values included in the financial statements. The fair value of land should be disclosed in the financial statements in accordance with the IPSA's reporting standards, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we also saw, as a generality in the reporting, delay in availing documentation to the Auditor General. Honorable Speaker, it's against the law, especially Article 26 of the Constitution and Section 68(2) of the PFM Act 2012, not to avail documents to the Auditor General for audit. In general, we saw most of these organizations, Honorable Speaker, did not avail documentations to the Auditor General. And what surprised the committee, Honorable Speaker, is when now the accounting officer appears before the committee, he proposed to carry all the volumes that he did not give the Auditor General during audit. That makes it very difficult. And Honorable Speaker, we will be recommending as follows, that for those organizations who did not give the Auditor General documentation at the time of audit, 1, we said the accounting officer should comply with the provisions of this section 68(2) of the Public Finance Act of 2012 by submitting all the required information for audit within the stipulated time. We insisted on that clause. And 2, within 2 months upon adoption of this report, any accounting officer who fails to provide required information for audit pursuant to section 62(1) of the Public Audit Act 2015 should be prosecuted for the offense pursuant to that section of the Public Audit Act of 2015. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, we are asking the Committee on Implementation to enforce the Public Audit Act, especially section 62(1), so that let the accounting officers abide by the provisions of the PFM Act, section 68(2) of the PFM Act of 2012. Honorable Speaker, as a generality, what did we also observe? There are delays in appointment of board directors. Honorable Speaker, we noted with concern that some state corporations were operating without properly constituted board of directors. The anomaly was attributed to delays by the appointing authority to fill vacancies once they arise. Honorable Speaker, 2 or 3 of the above 5 operated without board of directors. That in itself, an institution lacks the corporate image that helps to make decisions. What did we recommend, Honorable Speaker? On that generality, we said within 3 months upon adoption of this report, the relevant appointing authority for the respective board members ensures that all existing vacancies for the respective state corporations are promptly filled, and that in future, the tenure of the board members is staggered to avoid a situation where the term of all board members expires at the same time. We know, Honorable Speaker, some board members are appointed by the executive through the various line ministries and others by the president. So we are seeking that we cannot really point at one, but instead we make it also as open as that. We also made a recommendation, Honorable Speaker, that the committee reprimands the then Cabinet Secretary for Health for failing to fill the vacancies that existed in the board of Kenya Medical Laboratory Technicians and Technologies Board between 2018, Honorable Speaker, for 4 years, 2018 and 2022. That's a vast period, and yet the authority is by the minister to fill the board. Why did he not fill the board then? Honorable Speaker, we also note another generality on observation on irregular procurement processes and management of contracts. Generally, Honorable Speaker, there were concerns that some state corporations undertook irregular procurement processes contrary to the provisions of the Public Procurement and Assets Disposal Act of 2015 and the attendant regulations, legal notices, and government circulars, leading to the inflated costs of projects. Additionally, some contracts were managed poorly, leading to delays in completion, regularly cost variations, and thus causing unnecessary escalation of costs. Honorable Speaker, there are cost variations which were enormous. Usually there is variation allowable of 25%. But you could find, Honorable Speaker, in 2 or 3 organizations, as you will see in the detailed report that came up, some had to go beyond that 25%. That in itself is an irregularity, and we want to make the following general recommendations: that the accounting officers of state corporations should at all times ensure adherence to the budget, proper procurement planning, project management, and undertaking credible feasibility studies to prevent irregular variations during contract implementation. Honorable Speaker, should any breach be observed, the penalties prescribed in the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act 2015 and the PFM Act 2012 should be evoked by the DPP on a person found culpable. As we will go in the detailed report, Honorable Speaker, you will see that those persons will be mentioned. The accounting officer of state corporations should at all times comply with the provisions of Section 139 of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act 2015. The relevant authority should take action against those who may have contravened the section of the Act. Honorable Speaker, another matter that came up as a generality is the issue of litigation. We observed among the 5 state corporations, there are matters pending in court. The committee observed that a number of litigations concerning ownership of the land of state corporations and other legal matters have been pending before the court of law inordinately long, despite resolutions of the House through the previous PICs, reports calling for the expeditious conclusion of the cases. Honorable Speaker, most of the reports by PIC, they talk of a time frame for conclusion of the matter, legal issues. Some of them, they were not even supposed to be in the courts of law. They were supposed to be in arbitration. And Honorable Speaker, no action has been taken by the various state corporations. And in the detailed report, Honorable Speaker, you'll be able to see. And therefore, we made the following general recommendation: that within 3 months upon adoption of this report, the accounting officer whose lands are subject to legal suits or have other pending cases pertaining to the corporations should liaise with the Office of the Attorney General and petition the judiciary to consider prioritizing and expediting conclusion of the cases within the view of restoring the land to the public. Honorable Speaker, why should we seek that they petition judiciary? Because the mandate of litigation, the mandate of making any legal decision is by the judiciary. And Honorable Speaker, judiciary is held in trust because it's also serving the general public, and land is general public. So we are saying, Honorable Speaker, let also the judiciary take it fit that matters of land where institutions are seated very heavily in very heavy infrastructure has been built. Let them also deem it fit to quickly decide on matters touching on land, especially where government institutions are concerned. Number 2 of that general decision, Honorable Speaker, we say the accounting officers should strive to embrace alternative dispute resolution mechanisms in the solution of disputes before going to court. Most of the issues, Honorable Speaker, could have been decided at an alternative dispute mechanism, but accounting officers have let it go to court without necessarily being the route. Honorable Speaker, the 6th observation which we made as a generality of the 5 institutions is delayed recovery of receivables. Honorable Speaker, the committee particularly noted that KEMRI was in breach of Section 71 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 and the attendant regulations that require surrender of interest within 7 days upon conclusion of the assignment for which the said interest was issued. Honorable Speaker, you find that KEMRI sends students overseas to undertake studies, but they don't consider recollection of the interest. Officers go out, they come back at will, and Honorable Speaker, year in, year out, officers don't declare their interest. That in itself is against the law, and we recommended that the accounting officers should ensure that interest advanced to officers is surrendered within the stipulated period of 7 days after return to the workstation, in accordance with Section 93 of the Public Finance Management National Government Regulations of 2015. And within 6 months, Honorable Speaker, of adoption of this report, we also recommend that the accounting officers who will have failed to take necessary steps to ensure that all outstanding interests within the jurisdiction are recovered from the due date should be surcharged the full amount due to the interest due with interest at the prevailing CPK rate. Because, Honorable Speaker, this is a laissez-faire attitude by the accounting officers who simply watch the interest not being collected, and they continue dispersing more interest to the same officers. Yet, Honorable Speaker, accounting officers are the custodians of the same law. So we are saying a situation where the accounting officer does not recover the money, then we should compel him that we recover the money from the said accounting officer, so that they become they are held accountable, Honorable Speaker, to that extent. Honorable Speaker, having highlighted the generalities in terms of observation, allow me to go to a few selected specific entities that had issues, as I had mentioned. There are issues on receivables, which I would want to highlight, especially the entity Kenya Medical Training College. There were observations on 23rd report of Public Investments Committee and touching on receivables from exchange and non-exchange transactions. And we noted, Honorable Speaker, that KMTC Board of Management had recommended write-off for the amount of 21,831,115 and 19,812,181 from Kenyatta National Hospital and the Ministry of Medical Services, respectively. However, approval in this respect had not been obtained from the Ministry of Health. Number 2, the audit query on accumulated rent arrears by the University of Nairobi had been considered in the 19th report to the Public Investments Committee. The committee recommended for speedy resolution of the matters and seizure of the property in question. Honorable Speaker, these are 2 issues. The recommendation had been put to the ministry by the board to approve a very simple write-off, which was to be transmitted to the National Treasury in accordance with the law. The ministry has stuck on this write-off, Honorable Speaker. So you find the books of KMTC are always loaded with this as a receivable, yet, Honorable Speaker, the board has confirmed that this money cannot be receivable. Honorable Speaker, there is also a dispute arising from the relationship between KMTC and University of Nairobi with respect to the rental units that they have. This is a very old matter, Honorable Speaker, that we need to look at, and we avoid loading the books of KMTC with unnecessary receivables which are actually not there. So what does the committee recommend, Honorable Speaker? We recommended that within 3 months upon the adoption of this report, the National Treasury, the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of Education should fast-track resolution of the matter raised in the audit query and the observation of this committee and report back to the National Assembly. Honorable Speaker, we also recommend that the Committee on Implementation should follow up on the implementation of the PIC recommendations pursuant to its mandate.
Honorable Speaker, there are about 4 recommendations touching on the very issues that we are touching on today. Therefore, if we can follow those 2 recommendations, Honorable Speaker, we should expect that we bring this matter to an end. We don't overload the books of KMTC to look as if KMTC has money receivable. Yet, Honorable Speaker, we are not helping the organization. Honorable Speaker, we also noted from the books of KMTC the issue of ownership documents, where 22 parcels of land located at the headquarters and constituent colleges with a total acreage of 277.587 acres. They are valued at 502,485,000. It is only the Nairobi, Kakamega, and Portrees campuses that possess title deeds. Honorable Speaker, it's very shocking that all other campuses do not possess title deeds. In the absence of the evaluation report for the 32 parcels of land, the property, plant, and equipment balance, which they reflect in their own books, Honorable Speaker, of 6,393,208,699 in this financial statement as of 30th June 2018 was not fairly stated. So, Honorable Speaker, you can see you are weighting the books with 6.3 billion, but in real sense, Honorable Speaker, you cannot confirm the 6.3 billion. Honorable Speaker, we look at what we feel in our recommendation to the institution, that, Honorable Speaker, within 3 months upon adoption of this report, the accounting officer should liaise with the Ministry of Lands, Ministry of Health, and the National Land Commission to ensure that they secure ownership documents for all the colleges' land and report back to the National Assembly. Honorable Speaker, the other issue I wish to bring as a specific observation is the observation touching on Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral, and Research Hospital. On the issue of property, plant, and equipment, Honorable Speaker, the committee observed the hospital does not possess title deed and ownership documents for the 100 acres of land it sits on. The management of the hospital has made efforts to acquire ownership documents. However, the title deed has not been issued in the name of KTRH. The land has not been valued by a competent and registered valuer, and therefore the value they presented to us, Honorable Speaker, read 5,320,106,243, reflected the financial statement as of 30th June 2020, which we could not be confirmed. Honorable Speaker, when you look at the area around Kenyatta University Teaching and Referral Hospital and the installations on that land, it cannot be valued at 5.3. It's definitely more than that. Honorable Speaker, what do we recommend? We recommend that within 3 months upon adoption of this report, the accounting officers should liaise with the Chief of Staff and Head of Public Service, the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Lands, Ministry of Health, and the National Land Commission to ensure that they secure ownership documents for all the land and report back to the National Assembly. Honorable Speaker, we also noted as an observation in the books of Kenyatta University Teaching and Referral Hospital that the accounting officer incurred an over-expenditure of 8,147,790 and thus breached Section 12 of the State Corporations Act, Cap 446, which requires that no state corporation shall, without the prior approval in writing of the Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury, incur any expenditure for which provisions have not been made in an annual estimate. Honorable Speaker, this money was paid to the board of directors irregularly. So what do we recommend, Honorable Speaker? We recommended that the committee reprimands the then accounting officer for violating Section 12 of the State Corporation Act, Cap 446, and within 3 months, Honorable Speaker, upon adoption of this report, the Director, Inspectorate of State Corporations should surcharge with interest at the prevailing CBK rate, then accounting officer, and then board of directors for the irregular expenditure and provide documentary evidence on the recovery and surcharge. So that, Honorable Speaker, these directors paid themselves all the 8 million. And whoever paid them, plus themselves who received that money, should be surcharged. And the government should recover and repossess that money, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we also noted the irregular employee costs. The accounting officer, Honorable Speaker, breach Section 8 of the State Corporations Act, Cap 446, for the irregular payment of medical allowance referred as locum amounting to 30,844,552 to medical staff without approval of the board. Honorable Speaker, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission is the only authority outlined in the Constitution to approve salaries and allowances of officers working in government institutions. However, there was no evidence provided to prove that locum had been approved by SRC after KUTRH board approval. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, in light of that, we recommended that the committee reprimands the then accounting officer for violating Section 8 of the State Corporations Act, for which provides that the quorum for conduct of business at a meeting of a board shall be 2/3 of the total number of members of the board. Honorable Speaker, this decision to pay the 30 million was arrived at when the board was not fully constituted. Therefore, it meant it was a way of making some ill recommendations to pay out the 30 million without the full board recommendation. The committee then, Honorable Speaker, reprimands the then accounting officer for failing to adhere to Article 230(4)(a) of the Constitution. And we say within 3 months upon the adoption of this report, Honorable Speaker, the EACC should investigate the conduct of the then accounting officer and the then board of directors on the payment of locum amounting to 30,844,552 to ascertain any impropriety. Should any officer be found culpable, the DPP to take the necessary action. Honorable Speaker, the final issue we observed in Kenyatta University Teaching and Research Hospital was the issue of non-submission of assets and liabilities register. Honorable Speaker, the then accounting officer for Kenyatta University Teaching, Research and Referral Hospital was in breach of Section 143(1) of PFM National Government Regulations 2015, which requires the accounting officer that shall be responsible for maintaining a register of assets under his or her control. And number 2, the accounting officer failed to submit the assets and liability register for the year ended 30th June 2020 to the National Treasury as required by the National Treasury Circular number 2320 dated 14th October 2020. This, Honorable Speaker, could be a conspiracy by the Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital officers to conceal the assets of the hospital for their own interest. Honorable Speaker, what do we recommend? We recommend that within 3 months, upon adoption of this report, the accounting officer should comply with the provisions of this regulation, number 143(1) of the PFM National Government Regulations 2015, and submit assets and liabilities register to the National Treasury as also required by the circular number 2320 dated 14th October 2020. And Honorable Speaker, the updated fixed register asset should be submitted to the National Assembly, Auditor General for verification and reporting in the subsequent audit cycle, failure to which disciplinary action should be taken against the accounting officer in accordance with Section 74 of the PFM Act 2012. Honorable Speaker, the third institution, Kenya Medical Research Institute, Honorable Speaker, we had the issue on property, plant, and machinery, and the committee observed that the matter was considered in the PIC report, number 19, in which the committee observed the following. The Institute failed to avail title documents of the aforementioned parcels of land for verification, thus making it impossible to confirm the ownership status of the parcel of land, in contravention of Section 37 of the PFM Act. Honorable Speaker, this is a case of 9 years since the audit revealed the issue of the land, and no replacement nor surrender of the title has been realized. The accounting officer provided provisional certificates of title for LR 82774 and LR 78302. What do we recommend, Honorable Speaker? We feel that within 3 months upon adoption of this report, EACC and DCI, because these are matters, Honorable Speaker, that cuts across both ethics and criminality. So we felt EACC and DCI should both investigate how the former CEO, Dr. David Koech, failed to hand over the institute title deeds for the corporation's parcel of land, their custody, or who holds them, and in whose name should any person be found culpable, the Director of Public Prosecution to take the necessary action. Honorable Speaker, we lifted this as the recommendations of the former PIC report in the 19th report. Therefore, it's the same that we brought together since the audit report carried on each other in a similar way. Honorable Speaker, there is the issue that came up as another observation for Kemri, residential staff housing. We see, Honorable Speaker, the matter was considered by the 19th report in the PIC. However, the matter regarding ownership and custody of the land title in which the staff houses are situated is still questionable. Honorable Speaker, they built a lot of staff houses, but nothing has been taken. Now, on the issue of this staff housing, something new that came up in this audit was there is purported transfer, Honorable Speaker, that despite the National Treasury having made payment totaling to 422 million in respect of clearing the loan due to the National Bank of Kenya on behalf of Cyper Enterprises Limited, Honorable Speaker, National Treasury paid 422 million, but the ownership title has not transferred to Kemri. So between the transfer of title from Cyber to Kemri, Honorable Speaker, something seems to have gone wrong. This is the new matter that has come up in this audit, and Honorable Speaker, we recommended as follows, that within 3 months upon adoption of this report, EACC and DCI should investigate the then accounting officer Kemri and Kemri officers involved in the procurement transaction to the land in question, directors of Cyper Enterprises Limited, both the then and the current managing director, National Bank of Kenya, and the then permanent secretary, National Treasury, officer who authorized the payment of 422 million with a view to establishing the culpability to fraud. Should any person be found culpable, the DPP to take necessary legal action. Honorable Speaker, the issue of payment and no title, they paid to who and for who, yet the title is nowhere to be traced, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the last institution that we went through is the Kenya Medical Laboratory Technicians and Technologists Board, where, Honorable Speaker, the dispute between Kenya Medical Laboratory Technicians, we observed that the dispute between Kenya Medical Laboratories Technician and Technologists Board and Prime Communication Limited has been concluded through a court ruling in which the board was ordered to pay 13,400,000 in fees. The case had been settled and payables paid. Arising from the foregoing, the committee also made the following observations: that the contract dated 30th December, Honorable Speaker, did not expressly state the contract sum or the basis of charging the fees contrary to Section 85(4) of the Public Procurement and Disposal Act. Honorable Speaker, the accounting officer decided to give a plain order without any summation of the amount on what to do, what to pay in advertisement between the board and this advertising Prime Communications Limited. And Honorable Speaker, as a result of that, the court ruled in favor of the Prime Communications Limited and surcharged the organization by 2,524,750, which was a surcharge on the invoice. And even the prime amount, Honorable Speaker, was not determined. Therefore, what did the committee recommend? That the debt relating to inspection fees has been outstanding for more than 10 years. That is the length, the duration of the, no, that's another recommendation. Honorable Speaker, that within 3 months upon adoption of this report, the accounting officer should fully implement the committee recommendation as contained in the 20th PIC report that recommended the board to institute a debt recovery system to avoid undue delays in debt collection, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, there is also the issue of financial position touching on this organization, that the matter which also had been considered in the 20th report of the Public Investments Committee, where the committee observed that the board lacks sufficient personnel to assist in enforcement of inspection to raise more revenue. In that respect, the committee recommended that parent ministry and the National Treasury allocates funds to the board to enable it streamline its operations, including recruitment of more staff. Honorable Speaker, the board is still struggling to finance its operations despite the committee recommendations. The board operations rely on the revenue received from registration and licensing of medical laboratories, technicians, and technologies, which is inadequate to finance its operations and run as a going concern. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, what do we recommend? We recommend that within 3 months upon adoption of this report, the Principal Secretary, State Department for Public Health and Professional Standards, in collaboration with the Attorney General and the National Assembly, to initiate the legal process, Honorable Speaker, to amend Section 33 of the Medical Laboratories, Technicians and Technologies Act number 10 of 1999 to expressly provide appropriation of funds by the National Assembly as one of the sources of funds to the board. Honorable Speaker, this is one case where the board suffers a lot. It is not entitled to get funds from the appropriation account. But Honorable Speaker, when you look at the activities that the board is carrying, they are entitled to getting funds from the appropriation vote. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, it's our considered opinion that we should now initiate that process. Either we will do it as a committee or any other member can take it up and process, so that, Honorable Speaker, we amend Section 33 of the Medical Laboratories, Technicians and Technologies Act to allow the board to get the funds. Finally, Honorable Speaker, Kenya Medical Practitioners Dentists Council, KMPDC, we observed as follows. On account of the critical mandate of the council, the committee noted that there is need for KMPDC to be supported by the Exchequer. This is another organization with the same problem, Honorable Speaker. The council operations rely on the revenue received from registration and licensing of doctors and health facilities, which is inadequate to finance its operations and run as a going concern. Honorable Speaker, what do we recommend? We recommend that within 3 months upon adoption of this report, the National Assembly should do the same way, initiate the legal process to amend Section 25 of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Act to expressly provide for direct disbursement of funds to the council without the ministry seeking approval from the National Treasury. Honorable Speaker, the caveat in this Section 25 of this board is that for you to get any allocation, the ministry has to seek approval from the National Treasury before it even appropriates funds, which is contrary to the current constitution, Honorable Speaker. The constitution is it should initiate the budget in the sector roles so that it goes upwards to the National Treasury, which is the opposite, Honorable Speaker. So I'll be employing to my colleagues. At the same time, my committee will be able to take up the role it deserves so that, Honorable Speaker, we initiate the process to make sure that we amend Section 25 of this Board's Act and to get the funds direct from the Exchequer. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move and ask my colleague, the great member, Honorable Martin Peters Owino, commonly known as Ward Chief, to second.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this time to second this motion. And I want to thank my able chair for such eloquent and with specificity as you move this motion. Mr. Speaker, we did interrogate about 5 corporations. And some had very, very voluminous documentation, but we went through them all. Allow me not to go into the specifics because my chair has really mentioned many of them, but I want to just highlight some things that really bedevil these corporations. Mr. Speaker, we do invest in corporations, state corporations, in order to get the good out of them, to plow back for social good for the Kenyans. And it is going around that these corporations, some are not doing well, and it is because of these reasons why we have unearthed them so that it can be looked into and corrected. The Speaker, one of them which came out very clearly from my chair is the issue of land. Many chunks of land, prime areas, no documentation, no title deeds, and people encroach into the land. And this attracts litigations. And again, as you know, litigations also attract expenditures, which eats into the same coffer which we are trying to get out of this corporation to invest somewhere else. Also, these lands were valued very less in some circumstances, and sometimes have no value also. And they are there just in the books. The other issue which came very glaringly, Mr. Speaker, is the board formation. Sometimes some corporations had delay in the boards. As you know, the boards hold the fiduciary responsibility in making decisions and also oversighting the management. Lack of boards interfered with checks and balances. That means money are being lost here and there. That also piggyback into the irregularities in procurement, which the chair talked about. In many times, we had inflated costs, irregular advertisements, and of course, escalations of course, because of delays. And this costed these corporations a lot of money, especially when they were doing the projects. Checks and balances were not as tight as we expected as a committee for the programs to be flawless, and also did not bring the accountability and responsibilities we needed in running a proper corporation to give returns. At times, the work plans were not properly followed. And you find that what was yet ought to have been done 6 months ago have not been implemented. And there were some reasons to this which we also saw coming from them. And one of the reasons, Mr. Honorable Speaker, was the budget. The budget and the exchequer release. I think this is, as a house, we should do something, because most of the time these corporations start projects, and at the end of almost the end of the fiscal year, you find the absorption has not been done because the exchequer did not release the monies on time. What does that do? If you are having a project going on, definitely if it runs into another fiscal year, you will have project overrun, and that is expensive. It will eat into the allocations that was put there. Also, sometimes in some of them, Mr. Speaker, we found that the budgets were not realistic. And also that had an effect on projects, of course. If you are under quote or you are under budget, you cannot finish. You need to look for additional resources which may not be forthcoming. And most of the time you find project stalls, and that causes a lot of overrun costs. Some of the fixed assets registers, as was mentioned by the chair, were lacking. If they were there, they were not updated at all. So you find the whole team is here, but they don't have updated fixed assets, which we found was very unprofessional. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I would like to appeal to the Committee on Implementation. Mr. Speaker, when we were going through all this, we found items which were recommended by previous committees, PIC committee, and have not been acted upon. Because our work as committee is just to is to recommend what to be done. Some we have done in 3 months, some we have asked that after 6 months this should be done. And the implementation committee, which is also in this house, is called to bite. If an issue is recommended to ACC or DPP, they should follow up to make sure that they are corrected, not to go into another fiscal year and come back to the committee again. So members, I really urge you, please support this motion, adopt it, so that it can go straight to the implementation committee. When we get into another fiscal year, we can deal with other years and not this one. So with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I second.
Honorable members, I now propose the question that this House adopts the second report of the Public Investments Committee on Social Services, Administration, and Agriculture on its consideration of the reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the Kenya Medical Training College for financial years 2017-2018 to 2020-2021. The Kenyatta University Teaching Referral and Research Hospital for the financial years 2019 to 2020. The Kenya Medical Laboratory Technicians and Technologists Board for financial years 2014 to 2015 and 2020 to 2021. 2020 to 2021. And the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council for the financial years 2017, 2018 to 2020, 2021, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, the 22nd of February, 2024. The Honorable Member for Wajir North. Proceed, Honorable Sani. Please give him the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The PIC report is very comprehensive, and a quick scan of it tells the commonalities in the institutions so audited. KEMRI, Kenyatta University Referral Hospital, the Kenyatta National Hospital. What is common is that there are governance issues. The fact that boards are not constituted at the right time. That breeds a lot of complacence in terms of work ethics and how these organizations operate. It breeds corruption because the board, in the essence of having a board in every organization is to make sure that governance issues is done at its best. The best practices that is common in managing such organizations has been lacking, and I believe that is the root cause of issues where the management are supposed to be accountable insofar as the management of those organizations are concerned. Mr. Speaker, land is an issue that is common in all the reports of this organization, that they don't have titles to the pieces of land they own. And land being an asset, that has a big impact or consequences on their accounts, audited accounts. So I don't know at this point why such institutions, national institutions, KEMRI, Kenyatta University Referral Hospital and Kenyatta National Hospital cannot up to now have a title in their names. That raises serious questions on the governance aspects too, and that is why their audited accounts should have issues. Valuation of that land is also a problem because the land do not have titles, and that is what affects the audited accounts. The boards of directors are not always in place at the right time. Of concern to me, Mr. Speaker, is issues touching procurement. At this point in time, when we have a constitution, a pragmatic, very promising, progressive constitution, the 2010 constitution, which has put a high threshold on establishing the legal framework for which procurement is being managed. We have procurement issues in all these organizations, actually in all the organizations which the report covers. When our constitution has set standards that procurement practices must be competitive, must be fair, transparent, cost-effective, that is the basis on which any procurement law must be anchored. At this point, it is demotivating. It is demotivating why Kenyatta National Hospital, KEMRI, and the other institution, Kenyatta University Referral Hospital, cannot make sure that those constitutional requirements, that threshold, is not met, and we have pilferage of public funds. of concern to me too, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that some CEOs are acting. This House has just been approving a CEO, the Director of Medical Services, who has been on an acting capacity for some 5 years. CEOs, if you ask yourself, why should CEOs be on an acting capacity? It is an issue, that's what breeds corruption. CEOs are being held hostage. They are not substantive holders of their offices. They will be rendered indecisive because they are not the substantive office holders. And in so doing, they will be cajoled or kind of asked to comply into some ungodly practices. And that means corruption thrives in such institutions just because there is no CEO, Mr. Speaker. Another concern is such big institutions, national institutions, have issues to do with interest, recovery of interest. Even smaller institutions have policies on managing their interest, Mr. Speaker. It is a big concern that Kenyatta National Hospital, Referral Hospital, and National Referral Hospital, KEMRI, have issues to do with interest. I believe time has come that the law must be followed to the letter. I'm sure it's a big corruption is a big concern as we speak. And the only way to manage, to do away with such practices is to make sure that everybody behaves ethical. It is criminal to make sure that it is criminal to use government funds and not accounting for them, Mr. Speaker. With those few concerns, I believe it is time to improve on the governance aspect of all these organizations. More so, such big, gigantic institutions should be the best to lead in the way of, in accounting for taxpayers' money. I support the report, and I would wish that these big institutions should have been the ones mentoring and leading the way for other institutions to follow. I support.
The MP for Turkana North, Ekwam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am a member of this committee and wish to thank the chair and the members for taking their time, our time together to put up this report. Mr. Speaker, much has been said, much has been put across by the chair in sharing the details of the report. I just want to add a few that, Mr. Speaker, one of the things we identified in interrogating the auditor's report and the staff of the different institutions was there was lack of enterprise-wide risk management in most of the institutions. Mr. Speaker, this is a requirement for institutions, and a lack of it is a big challenge in terms of managing resources that the government or public resources that have been invested into these institutions. Mr. Speaker, as alluded by the chair and the other speakers, most of these institutions sit on a land that do not have titles. And you realize, because of that, some of this land parcels have been grabbed by private individuals to the extent that there are cases that have been taken to court. And you realize these cases attract costs to these institutions. And so the committee has recommended that all the lands that these institutions sit and purport to own must have titles. That way, they'll be able to protect them from land grabbers and also make use of them. Mr. Speaker, the other thing that was glaring from this interaction with the institutions in this report was a lot of interests have not been recovered, and for a long time. And there are policies that guide use, utilization, and recovery. But that has not been followed. And the committee recommended that this must be done not less than 3 months. Mr. Speaker, the other thing that has also been so glaring in most of these institutions is when auditors get into these institutions, documents are not failed, and they take long to fail documents to auditors. And so, by the time the reports are concluded, auditors are not able to confirm some of the issues or queries that come out of this, of those audits. And so we want to encourage personnel of these institutions, and in all of them, that auditors must be availed with documents that they require so that we will be able to know whether public resources have been utilized well. Mr. Speaker, as also alluded by the previous speakers, and picking example of Kenyatta University Referral Teaching and Referral Hospital. This is a level 6 hospital, though young than the others, but there are a lot of things that are not right. One, Mr. Speaker, the title to this institution has been in dispute for a long time. And just because the land where this this hospital sits is part of the university, Kenyatta University. But there has been a problem. And I want to believe that problem is within the university to get out this land or provide the title for the land that is meant for the university. We've made a strong recommendation to the head of public services to expedite this process of getting the title for the Kenyatta University Teaching and Referral Hospital. Mr. Speaker, again, in that university hospital, as also alluded, it took some time, and maybe this will be confirmed by the implementation committee, whether the CEO, who for a long time had not been confirmed, and the human resource manual that is in place only allows acting position for 6 months. This is not followed in most of our institutions, as we realized in the audited statements. And so such a serious institution needs to confirm their CEO. Mr. Speaker, I want to leave at that and say I support this report. Thank you.
The MP for Githunguri, Madam Wamuchomba.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name's Gathoni Wamuchomba.
Order, it's not a Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My apologies. My name's Gathoni Wamuchomba.
Okay.
I just needed to clarify that. I rise to support that very detailed report from the Honorable Committee. And I must confess that that committee has done quite a commendable job. Matters land are very complicated. Auditing land that is in the hands of state corporations and authorities sometimes becomes very difficult and complicated. owing to the fact that sometimes the officers, the accounting officers, have a lot of bureaucracy for them to be able to get the right and relevant documents that are supposed to be used during audit. Auditing land that pertains to universities like Kenyatta University, the land that is used to settle the Kenyatta Referral Hospital, it's something that gives me excitement because I am not only an interested party in the land, but I am a neighbor. And as you all know, that sometimes when the neighbor's compound has issues, you also have issues. Mr. Speaker, allow me to just congratulate the committee because they have outlined issues that have been a pain to the communities that use that land for a long time. And how I wish that that kind of in-depth audit can also happen to the pieces of land that are now being used for special economic zones. Because the issues that I have heard from the report that has been tabled sounds like there are similar issues that we are hearing from communities that are now getting displaced or accommodated within the special economic zones. I hope that that committee has the mandate to also do an audit on the many parcels of land that we are handing over under that kind of a program. Mr. Speaker, I am very much concerned about issues of title deed. The report clearly states that there are institutions, government-affiliated institutions, that own land by paper, but they don't have the titles. That is the same scenario, Mr. Speaker, with some of the schools, public schools, that we are funding as members of parliament through CDF. We are forced to struggle so much to locate titles so that we can be able to put money, government money, in such schools. Unfortunately, some of these schools are schools that are constructed within the compound of those public entities and institutions that have been audited through that committee. I am very particular, Mr. Speaker, when I speak about title deeds, because I don't know how we are ever going to sort out this issue if we don't speak now, audit now, and give directions now. For example, Mr. Speaker, when I speak about the schools that are under the special economic zones, for example, in my county, Kiambu, we have the Tatu City Economic Zone. Before that area was outlined as a special economic zone, there were schools that were surviving in that piece of land. Not one school. For example, it's good to be factual. Under Tatu City Special Economic Zone, we have Gewe Primary School, Oaklad Primary School, Tatu Primary School, and Oaklad. Have I said Oaklad? Oaklad, Tatu, Gewe. Those schools traditionally were there before we allocated or transformed that land as a special economic zone. When the new investors come, they assume that the schools in the zone belongs to them. And they own the land, and they also purport to own the schools. But that cannot happen because, Mr. Speaker, these are schools that were funded using taxpayers' money, are continuously being funded, supported by the government through TSC. Teachers are posted in those schools. Money for capitation is shared in those schools. But the investors assume because we gave them the area as a special economic zone, they own the schools. So as we speak right now, Mr. Speaker, we don't know who owns those 3 public primary schools and where the title deed for those 3 public primary schools is. Mr. Speaker, this House must intentionally move to the direction of creating order, providing legal framework and policy documents that will guide us going forward. And therefore, when I listen to that very detailed report from my committee, my colleagues' committee, I am very excited. And how I pray that the recommendations that have been given by our honorable members from that committee are recommendations that are going to be implemented. They are recommendations that are going to guide us on how we are going to make legal framework so that we don't have these things coming up and back and forth. Back to the land that is hosting Kenyatta University Referral Hospital. Mr. Speaker, if we are not careful, that issue is going to be the next volcano, both politically and economically. And it's going to concern so many livelihoods. I cannot imagine that the report I have heard talks about whatever has been invested in that piece of land that occupies both the university and the hospital, spreading to even private hospital, is worth 5.1 billion. I can't imagine that is the kind of a report that we are talking about. And therefore, if we are going to plan around the 5.1 billion, we are going to be deceiving ourselves and deceiving the communities that have invested around that area. I know of people who have invested more than 30 million shillings as individuals in the area surrounding the hospital. And therefore, if we ignore the amount of investment that has been put around that land and give government offices untrue facts and make relevant laws and policies around untrue and misrepresented facts, we are soon going to get ourselves in a lot of problems. And therefore, it is my sincere hope as a lawmaker, as a leader, that this issue is not just going to be taken just like any other report that we have received in this House. I hope the Committee of Implementation, under the leadership and the guidance of the Speaker, is going to be given the right direction and timelines on when some of these recommendations should be put in place and should be effected. Otherwise, we are going to be singing a round game song that will not have echo until the problems comes back to us. Mr. Speaker, before I sit down, even as I congratulate the committee for the wonderful investigations that has been done, I still feel that there are other institutions that hold land that is in contempt, that is in contentious processes that needs to be audited. When I speak about other institutions, I'm also speaking about institutions that are holding land as sponsors of institutions, acting as mother institutions of upcoming institutions. We need to be very clear on how to go about the issues of land ownership of institutions that are purportedly sponsored by other institutions in existence. For example, Mr. Speaker, if you are to invest in a new TVET, the Ministry of Education directs you to invest in a new TVET, but sponsored by a mother TVET. And therefore, every time you have a question concerning land, you are not referred to the upcoming TVET, but you have to go through the sponsoring TVET. Some of these sponsoring TVETs are not in the same neighborhood with the upcoming TVET. And therefore, they may not know the implications of some of the decisions they make around land. And therefore, we find ourselves pumping money into upcoming institutions, which are sponsored by existing institutions, according to the laws, but the actual community land issues are not sorted by the mother sponsors of that institution. It is my sincere hope that this audit is not going to stop here. This audit is going to continue, and issues pertaining land and titling of land that is purported supposed to be under the public authorities and agencies related to government is put up very clearly. And before we put money or we fund such institutions, the title deeds should be clear so that we do not get ourselves into issues. As we speak about land, we cannot trust people who are in acting capacity for some of these sensitive issues. This issue of acting CEOs.
Add her another 1 minute, half a minute. What's the problem?
Thank you. Thank you for the addition. With the issue of having most of the government-related offices being governed and led by acting people people in acting capacity is something that is very worrying. Because some of these CEOs and finance managers in an acting capacity Sometimes they always give excuses of not completing an assignment or committing themselves into an issue because they are in acting capacity. I hope that after we are done with auditing of this land that is under the public authorities, we are also going to audit how many public institutions have CEOs as acting as actors of the actual oppositions held. And I think that is something that we need to look at because it is very, very important to safeguard the resources of this country. Otherwise, I support the report and congratulate the committee and the chair of the committee for the wonderful report tabled. Thank you.
No man rep for Wajir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a member of this committee, PIC committee, on Social Service, Administration and Agriculture, a watchdog committee that examines the Auditor's General report to ensure that there is effectiveness and efficiency in the use of the public resource. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my chairman and the committee for bringing such a very good report, working tirelessly just to come up with this report. Mr. Speaker, you find before this, the recent, before this 13th Parliament, I understand PIC was just one. And there was no one time in the previous 12th and 11th Parliament, and even beyond that, that some of these institutions were never audited. And it's the first time we have audited, and you will find in these corporate, state corporations that some of these state corporations have not been audited for the past 50, 40, even beyond that. The many years they have existed, and there are so many of that. And I remember we came across more than 50 state corporations that were never audited. And you can imagine, Mr. Speaker, this is a public resource that you're given. You use, and there is nothing to show that you have indeed used this prudently. Your gaze is as good as mine, Mr. Speaker. And some of the issues we have come across in these state corporations were delay in availing documentation, Mr. Speaker. You know, when these auditor generals go to these state corporations, the people they meet, the accounting officers, do not share the proper documentations. In this case, you're told the accounting officer did not give the reconciled financial and accounting records required by the PFM Act, Mr. Speaker. And they do this so that they are not caught on the things they do, Mr. Speaker. Not knowing that the money they use are the taxpayers' money of these people. Delaying of appointments, Mr. Speaker. When a state corporation has not indeed put board of directors for more than 2 years, how does that institution work? You wonder. And it's probably the PS that runs that particular state corporation. And because of that, there are so many vacancies that cannot be filled, Mr. Speaker. And it's my hope as a committee member, that this report shall be implemented in the next 3 months as we requested, Mr. Speaker. Coming back to KMTC and the Kenyatta University Referral Hospital, Teaching Referral Hospital, Mr. Speaker, we see chunks of lands in these institutions that do not have ownership. People are just taking the land of the government. Even the CEOs that left, these institutions had issues with title deeds. They did not have title deeds. Even besides the PIC writing to them, there were no clear indications of the CEOs trying to get the title deeds of this institution, Mr. Speaker. If I come back to KMTC, KMTC have many branches even in the counties, Mr. Speaker. And you'll find, like myself, the Wajir KMTC branch, Mr. Speaker, which was supported by, I remember, the county government of Wajir in the year 2013 to 2017. The land it sits on, it's not, it has no perimeter wall. And you can understand the community that surrounds the institution, what can happen to it if it doesn't have a title deed. Look at the Kenyatta University Referral Hospital. They have a big chunk of land, but they have no title deed. You know where it is situated and the community that surrounds. It's very vital that we take this institution seriously and we force this institution to bring title deeds for this state corporation, Mr. Speaker. Another issue we have come across is officers taking allowances, going back out of the countries, coming back and not even issuing an impress, Mr. Speaker. We have Cambridge Institution, 5 years. When we wrote this report, it was 5 years from the time these officers took this money, the taxpayers' money, and 5 years down the line, the officers from Cambridge did not issue an impress. Where on earth, Mr. Speaker, do you see, even you as a member of parliament today, if you get out of this country and you come back, the first thing you do is to issue or to surrender your impress, Mr. Speaker. It's high time we take this institution seriously that we are looking at, take us seriously so that they can account for any penny they take from the taxpayers' money, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have seen a regular procurement process and management contrary to provision of Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act 2015. What do you see here, Mr. Speaker? Delay in completion of contract. You award someone a contract, he takes his sweetest time to complete the contract, Mr. Speaker. You find someone inflating the cost of the contract from the time he signed the contract to the time he completed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are dealing with institutions that are not serious, that do not want to take care of the taxpayers' money of this country. We have a new clique, the agencies, who are telling us to account for any penny we take, Mr. Speaker. And we saw the other day the president abolishing more than 40-something institutions. Some of these institutions, it's high time we have a hard conversation. If they cannot account for the taxpayers' money, we abolish them, Mr. Speaker. So I ask this committee, this House, implementation committee, to take this report seriously, to give us feedback in the next 3 months, and hopefully we can be able to take forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Madam Kemei, and followed by please give her the
to add my voice on this very important report on consideration of the audited accounts of specified state corporations, which in this case we have 5 of them. Honorable Speaker, I really want to thank the chair and the members of PIC for this very, very detailed report. When I listened, Honorable Speaker, I realized that the committee have done a wonderful work. The work of compliance, Honorable Speaker, is not something very easy. And looking at the years which they actually audited, so many years, over 10 years. I even went to an extent of trying to converse with the chair if it was a mistake that the Kenya Medical Research, that is KEMRI, were audited for the year 2012, 2013, and then 2013, 2014. Those are very many years ago. And it is not very easy to get information, to get records for all those years. So I must commend the chair and the members of this very, very important committee, Honorable Speaker. And looking at the report, Honorable Speaker, I realize that we have so many issues concerning our corporations, and especially the issue of land ownership. That is so emotive, and it is not only affecting these institutions, but very many, many others. So this one being one of them, it is very unfair, it is very sad to have government institutions sitting on land that has no title deeds. This is the cause of many, when it comes to land grabbing, it is because there are no title deeds. So those people who have brains and who have time can go look for this piece of land. Maybe they go to the Ministry of Land, look at the land that has no title, and that is where land grabbing comes in, Honorable Speaker. I'm also much concerned that we can put up large buildings, very expensive buildings, and there are no titles. It is very sad. And I'm wondering, Honorable Speaker, what the real cause of this could be. The Ministry of Land have to come out very strong. Sometimes we hear that maybe documents get lost, and they should be automated so that when somebody calls to look for these documents, it is very, very easy to get them, Honorable Speaker.
The cost of education in this country. So what we need to do is frank, be forthright, and say, let us look at this problem in its entirety and look at it so that we can get a solution. And if every day when you wake up making a decision in the education sector under Article 129, and you say you are doing this for the benefit of the children, you will make the right decision. You will make the right decision, and this problem would be resolved. Going to Russell's question on not having worked in the public sector, I'm very passionate about the public sector. As I sit here, I have educated over 600 children. They've gone to various universities and various schools. I come from a humble background. I have seen what education can do. And I know when you disadvantage a child, you've taken away their life. Because without education, is the only thing that can help children in this country move to where they are supposed to be. So we must, as we wake up, if you are in the sector, ask yourself, this decision I'm making, is it for the benefit and the interest of the child? If you find that the answer is no, and you're in the public sector, then you're in the wrong place. You must answer that question correctly. So in terms of NACONEC, it is true, it was a program that was supposed to deal with the ASAL areas. But the disadvantage in, for example, Northeastern, is not different from the disadvantage from a child who lives in the slums in Mathare. They are both Kenyan children. So if we are able to get enough resources to cover for the children in Northeastern, we should be doing it for those other informal sectors. The question should be, how do we raise the funds so that we move from covering 2.6 million children to 10 million children? Because they are all children of this country. So what we need to be working on is not reducing what NACONEC is doing, but expanding it. Is not reducing what the school feeding program is doing, but expanding it. Because with that expansion, You know, somebody who is hungry in Northeastern is the same hunger that somebody suffers in another place. So we just need to accept that we are all Kenyans and we need to resolve the problems that we have in the best way possible. So if I was to become nominee, I would expand NACONEC. I would not reduce it. I would look for resources to ensure that in Northeastern, even the children who are following their parents, create caravan schools, so that they go together with their parents and they are being followed to study. So that, I mean, it is not rocket science. Those children are our children who are in this country. Yeah. And we cannot have a country where you do not enjoy the benefits of the country.
Shuria.
Oh, he has not answered the question on TVET.
On TVET.
TVET.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for reminding me.
Concise and precise.
The TVET is a very important program. The TVETs are being constructed in all the 290 constituencies. We have done, or they have done 252. I think there are 52 remaining. And what I would do for TVET is create the TVET colleges in the country and isolate a few to become centers of excellence. Because what is happening is, like, we are in Kenya and we have countries like Sudan, Congo, and they're not as advanced in the TVET using the technical studies as we are. So that we can have students coming from other countries to study in our colleges here in order to raise the funds. With respect to the dropout is because of the funding. So as a government or as a country, we need to start thinking, what other revenue, self-revenue collection, raising revenue methods can we come up with so that we can be able to sustain ourselves? And that is part of it. The other thing that needs to be done is we have major projects that take place in the country. We need to develop a mechanism where, if we are going to undertake, say, the expressway project, we identify how many trades, how many disciplines are in that project, so that we inbuild a component in the project where the students from these TVET colleges would work in that particular project, both as learning, because the TVET, you do 50% in class and 50% with the industries, and work with the industry so that we do not lose that momentum. So we need to keep going and expanding.
Thank you. Shuria? Kama huna swali ni sawa sawa.
Niko na swali, Bwana Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Bwana nominee, there's a lot of uproar in the education sector, and I was glad when you picked the issue of the finance bill. I'm not sure if you're aware of the High Court judgment on the constitutional petition 371 of 2021, Nelson Harvey versus Cabinet Secretary for Education, and 7 others on the CBC. What's your take on the judgment?
I haven't had a chance to look at the judgment. Maybe when I get a chance to look at it, then I'll get back to you. I actually not looked at it. Thank you.
Mishi?
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Chairman. Honorable Chairman, there's been a tendency whereby some TSC teachers, when they're posted to ASAL areas, they refuse to go on the basis of insecurity. This has really disadvantaged the learners from those areas to an extent that some of them drop some subject because they don't have teachers. What policies are you going to put in place to ensure that these students or learners from ASAL areas are not disadvantaged in terms of education? My second question, there have been recent research, and it has been noted that there's quite a number of girls dropping from school due to early pregnancies. What measures are you going to put in place to ensure that these girls are given a second chance to learn and they're not expelled from school until they're ready to give birth? And after giving birth and having maternity, they can be reinstated back to the school so that they finish their education. I thank you, Honorable Chairman.
Mukami? Amisi? Caleb?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to know, the nominee, what your views on the continuous delay of the disbursement of HELB loan. It has become a thorn in the flesh. Most university students are on the streets on the same, and also the arbitrary increase in the university fees that is now making education look like a privilege rather than it's supposed to be for everyone. Then lastly, Speaker, the late Dr. Griffin, the former founder of Starehe Boys Center, where I schooled, once told us that if you are given a glass or a coffee cup, you wash it as if there's no any other coffee cup that has been washed before. And the nominee, you are going to a very sensitive ministry. We've heard all these stories now and before on how you expect to do. Education, to me, is like an economic necessity to this country. It's a major pillar of any nation. And Honorable Speaker, from even the elementary to secondary to the university, if you look at the ASEAN countries, the development parts of Singapore, South Korea, Japan, it mostly was on education. They streamlined the education sector. When you report to office upon approval, if in case you are approved, what is these radical measures you are going to introduce in that ministry? What is this miracle? How are you going to perform the miracle, and what are the paraphernalias of this miracle? Because we need to see, we've been hearing these stories, so what is this that we are going to see in the Ministry of Education for once, when maybe in 100 days of your service to that ministry?
Answer those, Migos.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. To Honorable Mish's question on the northeastern teachers refusing to go because of insecurity, this has been a teething and thorny problem for TSC. And the only way this can be done is if we work together with the Ministry of Interior to come up with the parameters and strategies to ensure that the teachers are secured. And one of those would be perhaps coming up with low-cost boarding schools so that the student can be studying in one place that can be easily secured. On the question of girls' pregnancy, the ministry's policy is that they are not supposed to be sent away, and they are supposed to be given a chance to come back and continue with their studies. We don't have a policy where if they become pregnant, then that's the end of their life. That changed. It was there before, but it has since changed. To Honorable Mrs. Question on the continuous delay on HELB loans, this again is a problem of the resources being released on time, and the issue relating to the collections of those who have already gone before. I understand that there is a study that is going on to find out whether HELB can come up with a bond to ensure that they have enough resources to cover the students so that we avoid this problem. On the issue of the increase on fees, I understand the fees has not increased for the programs. What has happened is that before, the program's cost was not being indicated. Now with the new funding model, the program amount is being indicated, and the parents are thinking the fees has been increased from what was being given as capitation. So the fees, as I understand it, are not increased, and what would happen is under the new funding model, the student is still getting funded through the scholarship and help as to ensure that they are not paying more than they were supposed to be paying before. On the question of what I would do...
Excuse me, Mr. Nominee. You know, when you said that the money being indicated as school fees is the actual cost as costed by the ministry. But when a parent in the village receives a school fees, invitation admission letter that has 350,000, 450,000. Can you imagine the panic you're causing across the country? It is careless and not strategic. This is how you build anger in the country. So the letter should just have the exact cost per household cost, not the full amount, because the rest is being covered by the Higher Education Fund and HELP. So I hope you're going to change that if you're confirmed.
Thank you, Madam.
Related. Sorry to interrupt. Maybe Mr. Migos, you could also tell us in relation to that university funding, what would be your view on the funding using public resources of students who are in private universities? Well, across the country we have universities and campuses that are almost closing down because they don't have students being sent to them by COUPS, or the Kenya Colleges and Universities Placement Services.
Speaker, allow me briefly. On the same issue on the university funding model, the students, you'll have to have a criteria on determining who's the most vulnerable or poor. And what we have seen is that you have a category of children of single parents and a category of children who are orphans. And you give different, what measures will be put in place to ensure that you actually get the most vulnerable in the community and not disadvantage them in the new university funding model?
Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Finish the other round, then
yes,
come
I was going to the issue of the miracle that I would do in 100 days. There is no miracle that I'm going to perform. That there is a problem in the sector, and is a problem that needs to be faced head-on. So there'll be discussions on what do we do to solve those problems, and I'll not be able to do it alone. But I will offer leadership and hold discussions and consultations with each and everybody who is involved in the sector. For example, with respect to not having enough classes so that the children can be in school, the year 9 children can be in school in January, is an immediate problem. So that's a problem that takes priority that we need to look at and solve. So I can't sit here and say I have a miracle solution to all the problems that are there, but what I can do is say I'm ready and willing and able to offer leadership to get the kind of solutions that are required in the sector.
Order, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I didn't say miracle in literal terms. Honorable Speaker, when you stand to be a president of Kenya, you know what ails the country. You tell the people, this is the problem of this nation. This is what I want to solve. That's what I need to hear from the nominee. This is the problem of the Ministry of Education. This is how I intended to solve. You can't say, I will get there and consult. What are you consulting on? On what?
Migos, yes. Waswahili wanasema kila shetani na mbuyu wake.
Thank you, Honorable. What I can say is the challenge, as I said earlier, is a question of funding. So when I get to office, if you sit fit to approve my nomination, I see a solution in this way. In the monies that we are giving to the education sector, which is 27% of the budget, is this fund being used for the purpose for which it was meant? The UNESCO recommendation is that any country should spend not more than 20% of its budget in education. So we are spending 27. We are already above by 7%. It is not going to be possible to get probably more funding from the central government.
You know,
so the solution must be...
Migos, by Emase and somebody else, duplex applications of public resources.
Yes.
Take the issue of bursaries. The MCA is giving bursary. The Member of Parliament is giving bursary. The Women Rep is giving bursary. The Governor is giving bursary. Your ministry is giving bursary. Banks are giving scholarships, and many other organizations. Apart from the banks, all the others are drawing money from the same source. And sometimes you find fraudulent activities where one child gets a bursary from each of those giving bursaries. How are you going to reform the bursary scheme that will largely contribute in saving probably even 10 billion shillings?
Yes, Chair.
Honorable.
Chair, we also have TVET and also the technical schools doing the same thing.
Yes, I do. So as I had indicated earlier, because we've not done an audit of how many amounts of how much money is being used for this particular sector, that is the first thing I would commission, an audit to find out how much money is out here for the.
And you have the courage to dismantle these cartels?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. You are asked by Jeanette.
Yes, I'm going.
You know what you are walking into.
Yes, I understand that. There are cartels and other people, but we come at this time, at a critical time when there is a crisis. Using this crisis, it is very possible to dismantle the cartels because with the support, the political support, the parliamentary support, and the support from the public. If we say today that we know you've been doing the wrong thing, we will report you. Somebody would think twice before they continue with what they are doing. So I would use this crisis to dismantle the cartels that exist there. But on the issue of private universities that Mheshimiwa Ichung'wa asked, what the students who are going to private universities are getting is the loan facet, not the scholarship. So, and this is born out of the contention that the parents have chosen to take their children to private universities. They should be able to fund that. So they are getting the loan portion of the funding, not the scholarship portion.
That is under the new funding model.
Yes, that is under the new funding model.
There are students who are ongoing under the old DUC system.
Yes, the ongoing students under the DUC system
capitation.
are still getting the capitation. And speaking as an advocate, I think once you give somebody a right, if you start taking it in the middle, it becomes a bit bad. So I'm thinking that maybe.
My question was, what's your opinion on funding, using public resources to fund students in private universities? Or rather, even start from placement. Yes. Why do we have to place students in private universities where we have not filled up all the vacancies we have in public universities built on public resources, or reeling in huge debt because they don't have adequate resources since they don't have students? If approved, would you push COOPs to send more students to private or to public universities, irrespective of whether it's just, because even the loan element is public resources?
Yes. What I think can be done is to review the policy that is in place. Find out how did that policy come to be, because it's ongoing. The one for the new funding model has changed, but the previous one on capitation was a policy that was in place and was going on. So, and then we can do up the math and find out if it's just maybe 2 years that are remaining or 3. But it's not something that I can speak to at the moment. It is something that perhaps that I need to do more research on in order to be able to come to an informed decision.
Yes.
Madam Lesuda's question on how do we determine who is the most vulnerable. The tool that is used is called the means testing instrument that has 8 parameters. We think that those parameters are not comprehensive enough because it does not identify and they are not linked sufficiently to determine what the incomes of those parents are. So what we think is that it needs to be expanded and linked, because what has happened is you would find the rich not feeling the proper figures, and the poor, because sometimes of lack of knowledge, they do not put in the right information. So we need to come up with a tool akin to the psychometric test, where you can put so many answers, but at the end, you get the correct result.
Because I'll be more comfortable if you say, if confirmed, I will come up with a tool.
If confirmed, no? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. If confirmed.
Thank you, Chairman.
Because you are going to give policy direction to the ministry.
Yes, if confirmed.
Yes, so when, okay, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. But I will not talk again, but I wanted to just say to the nominee, if you get this opportunity to serve Kenyans in that docket, because I've listened to you carefully and you keep talking about money, all your solutions seem to be around having a budget. I want to assure you that as a parliament, we are just about to pass a very rationalized budget, where budget cuts are across the whole, all the ministries. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yes, Migosi, I think we'll end there. There are some Kenyans sending in messages. Many you have answered. One says, ensure TVET students get their certificates from their colleges within a month of graduating. The domicile of JSS we have dealt with. Another asks, where will senior secondary school be domiciled? We have dealt with. Workers with disabilities are forced to renew exemption certificates every 5 years when their status does not change. I think that is valid. Another one has said, what are you going to do about mushrooming boarding schools, especially in Kisii, that have no facility